You send about 100 emails a day, maybe more. You type something, hit send, and boom, it shows up in someone's inbox halfway around the world in less than a second. We all do this so automatically that we never stop to think about what just happened. But here's what nobody tells you about that little send button. It just kicked off one of the most complicated journeys on the entire internet. And the way your email actually gets from point A to point B, it's nothing like what you probably imagine. In the next 15 minutes, you're gonna understand the hidden infrastructure that makes email possible. And once you see how this actually works, you'll never look at your inbox the same way again. Here's what's really happening every single time you send an email. Picture this scenario. You're at Starbucks, typing an email to your friend in Tokyo on your iPhone. You hit send, your brain thinks that email just flew directly from your phone to their phone, right? Like a text message, but fancier. That's what it feels like. Instant, direct, simple, but that's not what actually happens. Not even close. What really happens is your email gets broken into tiny pieces. Each piece gets wrapped in its own little envelope with directions written on it, and then those pieces get tossed into a massive global system of interconnected networks where they bounce from server to server to server, sometimes taking completely different routes until they all somehow arrive at the right destination and reassemble themselves back into your original message. It's like if you ripped a letter into 50 pieces, threw them into the wind, and trusted that they'd all find their own way to Japan and tape themselves back together. Wild, right? And this matters because email is the foundation of everything you do online. Your Netflix login comes to your email. Your bank alerts, email. That Amazon package tracking, email. Your entire digital life depends on this system working perfectly billions of times a day, and you've probably never once thought about how it actually happens. It's not just about understanding technology, it's about understanding the invisible infrastructure that holds your entire online existence together. So let's break down this journey, and I'm going to show you why the way email actually works is way more fascinating than anyone's ever told you. Here's what I call the deception of simplicity. Email feels simple because the interface is simple. You see a to field, a subject line, and a box where you type your message. 3 things, that's it. But behind that simple interface is something incredibly complex. It's like looking at your iPhone and thinking, oh, it's just a rectangle of glass, while ignoring the fact that inside that rectangle are literally billions of transistors working together. Think about it this way. When you mail a physical letter, there's actually a straight line from you to the recipient. You hand it to the post office, they figure out the route, and it travels that route to the destination. Simple chain. But email doesn't work like that at all. Your email doesn't follow one path. It doesn't have one journey. It gets chopped up and scattered across the internet like confetti, and somehow it all comes back together perfectly on the other side. This matters because when your email doesn't arrive, or when it takes forever, or when it ends up in spam, you think something broke. But here's the truth. The fact that email works at all is the miracle. The system is so complicated, with so many steps and so many things that could go wrong, that every successful email is basically a small miracle of coordination. Let me show you something. When you hit send on that email to your friend in Tokyo, your phone doesn't actually send anything anywhere. Not yet. What your phone does is hand your message to your email provider. Could be Gmail, could be Outlook, could be your company's email system. Doesn't matter. That provider becomes responsible for actually sending your message. You're not the sender anymore. Your provider is. And here's where things get interesting. Your email provider looks at where that email needs to go. Tokyo, in this case. But your provider doesn't know how to get to Tokyo. It doesn't have a map. So it has to ask. It uses something called DNS domain name system, which is basically the phone book of the internet. Your provider asks DNS, hey, where does this email need to go? And DNS responds with an address, not a street address, an IP address. But here's what makes this even more surprising. That IP address isn't your friend's phone. It's not even your friend's computer. It's the address of their email provider's server. So your email has to travel from your provider's server to their provider's server. Gmail to Gmail, or Gmail to Yahoo, or Outlook to some company server in Japan, server to server. That's the actual journey. Now here's the sneaky part. Your email doesn't travel as one piece. Think about how Netflix works. When you stream a movie, Netflix doesn't send you the entire movie as one giant file. That would be impossible. Instead, it breaks the movie into thousands of tiny packets, sends those packets separately, and your device reassembles them on the other end. Email works the same way. Your email gets broken down into packets, little chunks of data. Each packet gets wrapped in what's called a header, which is basically a set of instructions. The header says, this packet belongs to this email, it's piece number 7 out of 23, and it needs to end up at this IP address. Then those packets get released into the internet. And here's what nobody wants to admit. Those packets don't all take the same route. They can't. The internet isn't one thing. It's millions of interconnected networks owned by different companies, different countries, different organizations. Your packets might travel through servers in California, then Texas, then New York, then across an undersea cable to London, then to Frankfurt, then to Seoul, and finally to Tokyo. Or they might take a completely different route through Seattle and directly across the Pacific. Some packets might take the northern route, some might take the southern route. They're all trying to get to the same place, but they're finding their own paths. This is what I call the chaos principle. Email works by embracing chaos, not controlling it. The system doesn't plan the route ahead of time. It doesn't say, okay, all packets will follow this specific path. Instead, it releases the packets into the network and trusts that they'll figure it out. Each router along the way looks at each packet and makes a decision. Where should this packet go next? And it sends it to the next router. That seems like a good option. The router doesn't know the full path. It just knows the next step. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to get from New York to Los Angeles, but you can only see 1 mile ahead of you at any given time. You make a decision about which direction to go based on that 1 mile of visibility. Then you make another decision, then another. Eventually, you end up in Los Angeles, but you didn't plan the route. You just kept making the best decision you could with limited information. That's how your email packets travel across the internet. This matters because it explains why email is so reliable even though the internet is so chaotic. If one router breaks down, the packets just route around it. If one path gets congested, the packets find another path. The system adapts automatically without anyone controlling it. It's designed to work even when parts of it are failing, and that's exactly what happens every single day. But here's where it gets really interesting. Those packets are arriving at the destination server in Tokyo, but they're not arriving in order. Packet 7 might show up before Packet 3. Packet 15 might get delayed and arrive last. Some packets might even get lost entirely and have to be resent. The receiving server has to sit there and wait for all the packets to arrive, check that they're all present, put them back in the correct order, and then reassemble your original email. It's like receiving a jigsaw puzzle in the mail, but the pieces arrive separately over the course of several seconds, and you have to put it back together without knowing what the picture is supposed to look like. And if even one packet is missing, the whole thing fails. The receiving server says, hey, I'm missing packet 12, send it again. And your provider's server resends that packet. This happens automatically, behind the scenes, millions of times per second across the entire internet. You never see it, but it's happening. Now let me show you something that might blow your mind. Between your provider's server and your friend's provider's server in Tokyo, your email might pass through 15 or 20 different routers. Each router is owned by a different company. Some are owned by internet service providers like Comcast or Verizon. Some are owned by backbone providers like Level 3 or Cogent. Some are owned by universities or governments. And none of these organizations particularly like each other. They're competitors. But they all have agreements to pass each other's data along anyway, because that's the only way the internet works. This is what I call the trust paradox. The internet runs on cooperation between competitors. Your email from Google's servers might pass through Microsoft's infrastructure, then through Amazon's, then through some regional ISP you've never heard of, and finally to Yahoo's servers. These companies compete for your business, but they cooperate to move your data. They have to. Because if any one company said, nope, we're not forwarding packets for our competitors, the entire internet would fall apart. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This whole system is built on trust, and that trust is completely unverified. When your email passes through 15 different routers, any one of those routers could read your email. They could copy it, they could modify it, they could delete it. Nothing in the basic email system prevents this. The protocols that make email work, SMTP, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, were designed in the early 1980 seconds when the internet was tiny and everyone knew everyone else. They assumed good faith, they assumed trust. That's why encryption matters so much now. When you see that little lock icon in your browser, or when you see TLS or SSL mentioned in email settings, that's encryption being added on top of the basic email system. It's a layer of protection that wasn't originally there. Your email still travels the same chaotic path through 15 different routers owned by 15 different companies, but now it's scrambled. Even if someone intercepts your packets, they can't read them without the encryption key. But even encryption doesn't solve every problem, because here's what most people don't realize. The content of your email might be encrypted, but the metadata isn't. The metadata is everything except the actual words you wrote, who you sent it to, when you sent it, the subject line, the email addresses involved, the IP addresses of the servers. All of that travels in plain text, visible to every router along the way. It's like sending a letter in an envelope that nobody can open, but the envelope has your name, their name, the date, and a summary of what's inside, written on the outside in big letters. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. The routers need to see the metadata to know where to send the packets. But it means that even with encryption, anyone along the path can see who you're talking to and when. And that information is incredibly valuable. Law enforcement wants it, advertisers want it, foreign governments want it, and they can get it. Because it's right there, unencrypted, passing through routers all over the world. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah's a marketing manager at a tech company in Austin. She sends maybe 200 emails a day, proposals to clients, check-ins with her team, calendar invites, file attachments, everything. She's been doing this for years. And she's never once thought about where those emails actually go. To her, email is like texting. She types, she sends, it arrives. Magic. But last month, Sarah's company got hit with a phishing attack. Someone sent an email that looked exactly like it came from her CEO, asking her to wire money to a vendor. The email had the CEO's name, the company logo, everything looked perfect. Sarah almost did it. She got all the way to the bank transfer screen before she decided to double check. And when she called the CEO, he had no idea what she was talking about. He never sent that email. Here's what Sarah didn't realize. Email headers can be faked. When you receive an email, you see who it's from based on what the sender typed into the from field. But that field is editable. Anyone can type anything there. I could send you an email that says it's from the President of the United States, and your email client would display it as coming from the President. The email system has no built-in verification. It just trusts whatever the sender claims. That's because email was designed in an era when only a few thousand academics and researchers used it, and they all trusted each other. Nobody anticipated that billions of people would be sending trillions of emails, many of them malicious. So the system has no authentication built in. We've added layers on top to try to fix this. SPF records, DKIM signatures, DMARC policies, but those are optional add-ons that many email servers don't use. The core system still just trusts what the sender says. Now compare that to Marcus. Marcus works in IT at a finance company in New York. He also sends hundreds of emails a day. But Marcus understands how email actually works. He knows that the from field can be faked. He knows that attachments can contain malware. He knows that links in emails might lead to spoofed websites that look real but aren't. So Marcus treats every email with mild suspicion. He hovers over links before clicking to see the real URL. He checks headers on suspicious emails to see where they actually came from. He never sends sensitive information over email without encryption. Marcus isn't paranoid. He's not spending all day investigating his emails. He just understands the system. He knows that email is fundamentally insecure by design, so he adds his own layer of verification. When the CEO asks him to wire money, Marcus picks up the phone and confirms. Takes 30 seconds, saves his company from losing $50,000. Notice how Marcus isn't smarter than Sarah, he just has a different mental model. Sarah thinks email is like talking to someone face to face. If it says it's from the CEO, it must be from the CEO. Marcus thinks email is like getting a letter with no return address. It might be legit, but you should verify before trusting it. Same task, different understanding, completely different outcomes. Here's what most people don't realize. Email isn't broken. Email is working exactly as designed. The problem is that it was designed for a different world. A world with a few thousand users who all knew each other. A world without spam, phishing, malware, or nation-state hackers. A world where you could trust that an email claiming to be from someone actually was from them. That world doesn't exist anymore. But the email system still acts like it does. It's not actually about having better spam filters or stronger passwords. Those things help, but they're band-aids. The real issue is that we're using a system built for a tiny community of trusted academics to run global business, personal communication, banking, healthcare, and government. We've stretched email far beyond what it was designed to do, and we're shocked when the cracks show. But the cracks aren't failures. They're features that made sense 40 years ago and don't make sense now. The people who succeed with email don't have special tools or secret knowledge. They understand that email is a fundamentally insecure, chaotic system that somehow works anyway. They treat it accordingly. They verify before trusting, they encrypt sensitive data, they assume that anything they send might be read by someone else along the way, they don't send passwords or credit card numbers. They use email for what it's good at, quick, asynchronous communication, and they use other tools for everything else. So here's what we've uncovered. Your email doesn't travel directly from you to the recipient. It gets broken into packets. Those packets scatter across the internet through dozens of routers owned by different companies, and they reassemble at the destination. The system embraces chaos and relies on cooperation between competitors. It was designed for trust in an era when trust made sense. And even with encryption, the metadata about who you're emailing and when is visible to everyone along the path. Think about everything we just explored. The chaos principle means your email takes an unpredictable route that changes every time. The trust paradox means competitors have to cooperate for the system to work. And the fact that email headers can be faked means the from field is basically meaningless without additional verification. This all connects to one big insight. Email works despite being fundamentally insecure, not because it's secure. We've just gotten really good at adding layers on top to make it safer. The question isn't whether email is secure. It's not. The question is whether you'll treat it like the chaotic, distributed, insecure system that it actually is. Because now you know that when you hit send, you're not sending a message directly to someone. You're releasing packets into a global network of competing companies who've agreed to cooperate, trusting that those packets will find their own way to the destination and reassemble correctly, hoping that nobody along the way decides to read or modify them. You can't unknow that. So next time you're about to send something sensitive over email, ask yourself this: am I treating this like a private conversation? Or am I treating it like sending a postcard through the mail that 15 different mail carriers are going to read along the way? Because once you see how email actually works, you realize that's exactly what it is. A postcard, not a sealed envelope. A postcard that gets ripped into pieces, scattered across the world, and somehow taped back together on the other side. And the fact that this works billions of times a day, almost instantly, without anyone coordinating it, that's the real miracle of email.